Hello everybody. What we're going to work on now is the centered moving average approach. We've already completed our SSI model. Your first step is going to go here and we're going to move copy, create a copy, and we're going to move it to the end. Go ahead and do that. I've already done it, and I've called my resultant sheet the CMA model. Our next step is to go ahead, we have our Z, go ahead and insert a column. You just right click and insert. Go ahead and delete it. And we're going to have Z and Z squared. So this is a setup for both a linear model and a quadratic model. We're going to insert two columns here, just as I did on the other one, in order to add in our moving average information. So once you get your two columns set in, we're going to first start calculating the moving average. So the moving average is, we're going to do a 4-period moving average. So it's 4 quarters worth of data, so it's the average of the 4 quarters worth of data, plus the average of these 4 quarters of data. So we're adding one to the end and dropping one from the beginning, and that's a quantity, and then we're dividing it by 2 to get the consolidated average. Once you get that equation in, you'll go ahead and drag it down. Your next step is to calculate the intercept using the intercept function. Your y variables are going to be your moving averages. Put that up one. Your x variables, your y variables are the moving averages. Your x variables, because this is a linear model, is the z values. So we'll simply incorporate those as our intercept, and then also here we're going to do our slope. I have to pop this one up. This is a picture wrong. So we'll get this one up to 5. So this becomes our slope and intercept of the linear model. Our calculated model is then going to be the slope, hit F4 to lock it in, plus, the intercept, hit F4 to lock it in, plus the slope, the green one, hit F4 to lock it in, multiplied by our Z value because it's a linear model. And we'll simply drag these guys down is the equation, so that we're always using the same intercept, same slope, and then our number here. To calculate the ratio, it's now going to be the actual quarterly sales divided by our linear model forecast. And then, just as we did before, we're going to calculate our SSI by doing the filter and then selecting the proper quarter all the way along. So these are all 3rd quarters. And we'll just drag that down, and then here you'll set it equal again to P3 or the previous setting, and then go ahead and drag that down. Our quarterly forecast then becomes the linear model estimate multiplied by the SSI. Put that equation in and drag it down. Our error term is simply the quarterly forecast minus, the actual quarterly sales minus the forecast. We're going to come down here and we want to calculate the average error. In this case it's 7, because we're not doing strictly with a linear regression, we're using the SSI adjustment to it. The error doesn't have to be 0. Our sum of squares equation for the entire column, and then our standard error of our estimate becomes the square root of or sum of squares, divided by the number of observations, which is 34, minus the degrees of freedom. Now, we have 3 degrees of freedom because we have an intercept, a slope, and the SSI. So this becomes our standard error. Our next step is the z. That hasn't actually changed. We need to modify our standard error equation. We're still doing the 1 plus 1 over 34 plus z minus z mean squared divided by the sum of squares, but our standard error is now changed so that it is equal to the standard error of the estimate calculated down here. To get our high and low limits, we need to incorporate our z value, or t value, sorry. And again, we're going to use 0.2. The main difference here is that we have 34 minus 3 instead of 34 minus 5 because that's our degrees of freedom. And then if you've built your equations correctly, the low and high limit should just update correctly. But you'll just check them, make sure that they're really good, and then our range variable we're going to check as well. We're going to generate a couple of plots. The first plot we're going to generate is our error plot. So in this case, what we're doing is plotting. Just come here to the design and the select data. So our data that we're using is just the column of errors, and our horizontal axis is our quarters that we're including in the analysis. And you'll notice that we do not have a random pattern. We have a significant trend up, trend down, and then we get a little bit better in terms of random, although we tend to be underestimating. And I'm going to stop here. You should have had your model done at this point and your error taken care of. And when we come back, we'll talk about assessing the model in a little more detail, kind of explaining what's going on here. All right, thank you.